Hi there, brand builder. My name is Mash Bonigala, brand strategist. And I wanted to ask you a quick question. What happens when what you say as a brand and what you want your audience to sort of think about you or to feel about your brand is completely different from what you really feel as a brand internally, or what you really do internally as a brand? What do you call that? That is a brand disconnect. Now, brand disconnect can happen with huge, brands like Apple or Tesla, or an interesting example, Rivian, which we'll talk about in just a second. Or it can happen even if you are a single person brand or business, right? As long as what you say, what you promise to the world is different from what actually happens internally within your operations, within your execution, with how your products or services are produced or delivered, the promises that are kept or not kept, then a brand disconnect happens. Now, why is that important? Because at the end of the day, especially now, your audience are quite smart. Consumers have become really smart. Now, I don't mean smart in the clever, smart way, but rather in the aware way, right? Because of social media, none of the old traditional marketing efforts or tactics or strategies hold any value these days. Yes, they're still working, and companies, brands are pumping in millions and billions of dollars still into traditional marketing channels, but it's tapering down, right? It's going to come to a day where they hold zero value. So when you have an environment when you have smart consumers and you are using omni-channels, you're using social media channels, and groupthink comes into play, then having this disconnect between your branding and your culture, your internal culture, that leads to a disconnect, and that's going to really affect your business. Number one, it's going to lead to loss. But more importantly, it's going to lead to lack of growth. Loss, you can really see it straight away, right? If you're saying something, let's say you say that your brand is all inclusive, your brand cares about the customers, it cares about the world, and so on and so forth. And then internally, the management doesn't really care about their employees. They maybe have a few issues with gender discrimination, or they produce their products, unethically. Well, they don't produce, but maybe in the chain, somewhere in that production chain, there's components that are not really good for the planet, for example. Now that, of course, when that happens and then you get found out, then yes, it leads to loss. But then opportunity cost is worse than actual loss. Now, what does that mean? It means that, let's say your brand can earn potentially a revenue of $1 million per year, but your brand is only making, $500,000, right? You think your brand is doing well, and you think, okay, if we work harder, if we pump in more money into marketing, then you know what, we could get to that stage. But it's already opportunity cost. You're already losing that. You're leaving money on the table because of the disconnect. And you will not really think about it. Even if you're a single person brand, right? If you're just a single person, let's say you're offering a service, copywriting services or accountancy or financial consultant or even real estate consultant or broker, whatever, right? If, for example, you do invest a little bit in branding, so your branding looks awesome, your website looks awesome, but then you're hardly reachable, or the experience people have when they interact with you is not aligning with what your message is, right? If your message is that, just like Amazon, that you care about your customers, that you are customer centric, and that you will do anything to help your customers succeed, and then when you're interacting with your customers, you try and charge for things that may not, but they hold value, but they could be given to your client as a part of your service, but you nitpick and you penny pinch, or you all that. Or maybe you're aggressive, and dealing with you is not so friendly. It's a little difficult. That could be something that creates a disconnect. So what then happens is that it sort of spills over into your entire branding persona, and the disconnect is evident. It's so insidious that you won't realize it. You don't know that it's happening, because none of us really look at our own faults when it comes to issues in our lives. We human nature is typically to try and find an external source for our problems, right? I wouldn't say necessarily blame, but it is natural. So I think the first thing is to look at your brand. If you already have the messaging done, to look at the brand messaging, to look at the branding, and then to look at your internal culture. Now, internal culture is, most people, when they hear that word, they think that internal culture is in Google, for example, offering free lunches to their employees, or some companies having a foosball table or a pool table in the office, or Friday free beer and pizza. Yes, that's culture. That's part of the culture. But culture is much more than that. Culture is the behavior. It's the values, not just the external values. So your brand has some core values, right? And you say, okay, we stand for integrity, we stand for equality, or we stand for, customer-centric solutions, or something like that, right? And then internally, because your employees are your customers, right? Unless, of course, you are the only employee. And then you treat your employees by a different set of rules, or you don't even realize that you're treating them in a different set of rules, right? So you need to do this audit. You need to find out if there is a disconnect. Now, there are other forms of disconnect, especially product, service, delivery, execution. If it's products, then the way they're made. And of course, the customer experience during the purchase cycle, so the buyer's journey, and the purchase itself, and then of course post-purchase, right? All these things, are they aligning with what you represent your brand as? Very important question. You need to think through that. And this is a great part of the go-to-market strategy. So if you're building a new brand, from scratch, then this is a great time for you to make sure that when you create your brand elements, your brand essence, your brand persona, so you got your vision, mission, you got your purpose, of course, and you got your core values, and you got your messaging framework that is being built. Make sure that it's not just fluff, right? That it's not just aspirational sounding words and, we stand for this, we stand for that. No, just make sure, question yourself. Do you, as the brand stakeholder, as the owner of the business, do you align with those attributes, right? Because not all of us have all the attributes. Maybe so you have some great attributes, some you don't, right? Maybe integrity may be your attribute, but not equality. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'm not saying that just because your company has those attributes that you should also. No, but you need to be aware of it so that you can then sort of mitigate it and say, I cannot let my personal attributes, create a misalignment or a disconnect with my brand. That is what is called as brand leadership, right? And take the case of, let's look at two examples. Electric vehicle market exploding. Let's take the good case scenario. Tesla. Tesla's mission is to accelerate sustainability, right? So that is their mission. And if you look at that's the branding, for example. But if you look at their culture, now the culture is, like I said, it's not foosball tables. It's not just that, right? It's their production process. It is their decisions. Now, Tesla is now leading the market. Primarily, one of the biggest features that they have, which Tesla owners love and people decide to buy a Tesla because of that feature, is their vast network of chargers and superchargers throughout the United States, throughout Europe, throughout the world, right? Slowly growing. They have by far the big, in fact, no other auto manufacturer comes anywhere close to this network. Now, that could be considered their unique selling point. That could be their differentiating factor. It was a differentiating factor. But just recently, Tesla opened up, or at least is doing an experiment, trial run in Netherlands. They're opening up their charging network to non-Tesla cars. Now, why? I mean, if that is a differentiating factor, why are they doing that? Isn't that counterintuitive? Isn't that in fact, it has made a lot of Tesla owners angry that Tesla made the decision. But if you think about it, from a mission perspective, from their purpose perspective, by opening up, of course, it also has business advantages long term. But if you think about it, by opening up the network, they are accelerating the sustainability kind of movement. Because then people they don't necessarily have to buy Tesla. They can buy any electric car knowing that, wherever they go, they can charge, right? Now, compare that to Rivian, another electric vehicle manufacturer. And by the way, I'm just basing this on a piece of news that I read yesterday about how their sales president, a woman, sales president, was fired, and she's in the process of a lawsuit. Now, the core of this issue is that Laura Schwab, the ex president of sales for Rivian, claims that Rivian has a bro culture, right? So it's like an old boys network. The founder is literally in the driver's seat, and he's surrounded himself with yes men, so to speak. And between themselves, they recruit each other, and they have their backs, and that how she, as a female employee, felt marginalized, right? So even though in fact, Laura was the first female president of Aston Martin in their 108-year history, right? So she was hired, and they gave her a huge salary, huge bonus, and options, and all that about a year ago, right? Exactly about a year ago. And she claims that when she was hired, there was no plan in place for the sales process for delivering 1,000 Rivians, right? At least 1,000 Rivians. And then when she came in, her job was, of course, to create that sales platform, to create that strategy. But yet, apparently, she was excluded from all the important meetings. She was not consulted, and when she came up with some ideas, they were not received by her immediate boss, and so on and so forth. So anyway, I will let you Google this and read more about it. But how is that relevant to our discussion? Well, Rivian, Laura claims, when their messaging is all about this brand that is inclusive, and so this bro culture does not align with the brand message of Rivian. There's a disconnect, and it's such a fundamental disconnect that it could end up destroying any brand. Especially Rivian now, they have an potential IPO coming up in a week or 2 weeks, and of course, Laura's attorneys timed this really well. But this, I think, is at the fundamental. It's the difference between Rivian and Tesla. So just like that, think of yourself. If your brand is customer centric, like everybody has to be, and yet your employees, they don't treat your customers well. They're rude, or they're reckless, or and that goes back to your hiring policies. And your hiring policy is the culture, right? When you're hiring, do you just look at the skills they have, the experience they have, or also do you look at their EQ, right? Emotional quotient, right? Do they have empathy, especially if they're customer facing? A simple thing like that sets that alignment between your brand message and your actual culture. And that then translates into happy customers. So anyway, this may sound like an academic concept or a theoretical concept. I believe that it is a very, very, very real issue. Even single-person businesses, two-person teams, small businesses, mom and pop, disconnect is what destroys businesses. It leaves money on the table. It allows competitors to take over. And when a company like Amazon, which, whose mission is to be the most customer-centric brand in the world, has already achieved that, and it's going to achieve it more. Everything's about customers. They come into your market, they're going to, uproot your business. You're going to lose because, of course, they have economies of scale, and they have, a lot of things going for them. But you could, if your branding is aligned with your culture, if your core values and your brand promise is executed and it's baked into your culture, into the way you produce your products, into the sales process and post-sales process. If something goes wrong, your refund policies, how do you handle those? Complaints, how do you handle the complaints? All these things, then you know what? I guarantee you that it'll form 20, 30% of your revenue, lost revenue, potential revenue, right? Okay, so that is the topic for today. I hope you found it useful. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so that the next video you get alerted. Show some love to this video. Just like it. And if you have any questions about this particular topic, reach out to me. Post them below in this video, and I will try and answer them. All right. Till my next video, take care.